Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Vice Chair Roberts.
Good morning.
How are you? How's everybody? Good morning, Commissioner Reed. Good morning, Mrs. Fay.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tanisha.
Good morning.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have to leave at 11:45. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, am I allowed to give you my proxy if I leave early, if we have to vote?
We don't have to vote today.
Okay.
It's
All right.
just discussion.
All right. I don't know if we had to do anything with the 3-0 stuff to vote on or something.
The 3-0.
Yeah, the compliance and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, no, this is just discussion. Question and discussion.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner Mohammed.
Good morning. Good morning.
I will give Commissioner Coy about another 30 seconds before we get started.
And also, Madam Chair, Chris Doherty, CFO, just pointing out that I'm here in Allison Perkins Coe instead. So at least for the top of the hour. So no need to factor her into your chosen starting time.
Thank you. We have a very full agenda this morning, so I am going to get started, and perhaps when Commissioner Coy is able to join us, he will just merge right in. So good morning, everyone. Up there's Commissioner Coy right there. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chief Jones. I'm echoing. Can everybody mute? Hello? Oh, that's much better. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the September 19th Operations Committee meeting. We have a very, very full agenda this morning, so I'm going to ask that, one, my colleagues, we save our questions in an abbreviated fashion until the end of each respective presentation. And then for my presenters today, we have some very meaty presentations. Can we try our best to stick to our presentation schedules? There has been an update and it is noted in board docs. We will get kicked off this morning with the refinancing of existing City Neighbors Bond Guarantee. That'll be the first presentation of the morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Trevor Roberts. I'm a specialist in the Office of New Initiatives. Let me get the presentation up and we'll begin.
Good morning, Trevor.
Okay, so today we're going to be looking at a request from one of our operator schools. The request aligns with Board Priority 3, high quality modernized facilities. And just to start out with some background, starting in 2013, the board has guaranteed a bond from City Neighbors Incorporated. The bond was used to finance the renovation and purchase of equipment and furnishings for 2 of City Neighbors schools, City Neighbors Hamilton and City Neighbors High School. And just to be clear, these are City Schools facilities that are leased to City Neighbors, and the operator is responsible for upkeep and furnishing of the buildings. So the bond that the board guarantees currently runs through 2044. And going back to 2013, after the approval of the guarantee, board policy DCB was updated, which forbid this kind of guarantees for operator debt. So this, isn't something that the board usually takes up because of that change. But the guarantee was approved prior to that update to board policy. And just for background, there is only one other pre-existing guarantee for Baltimore Design School. So, this is a limited thing that the board does going back to before the policy change. We're bringing this in front of the board today because we do have a request from City Neighbors. They're looking to refinance the bond, which will allow them to lower the interest rate, and it will shorten the term by 1 year. And as the guarantor, City Schools does need to give approval to the refinancing. So City Neighbors is currently asking us to approve that refinancing. So some of the considerations for this move is that the refinancing will shorten the term a little bit of the debt that City Schools is guaranteeing, and will also lower the total amount. So going forward with the refinancing would put the district in a more advantageous position. And we are also working with the operator so that we can be made guarantor of last resort, which means that the operator would have to exhaust all their other assets before the district would become responsible for paying the guaranteed debt. So we think that the approval of the refinancing is makes sense for the district. And our recommendation is that the board waive the debt management policy to refinance this existing guarantee, which would put us in more advantageous terms. And as a condition to the approval of the refinancing, that we agree with City Neighbors on language that is acceptable to the district, that does not increase the obligation in any way. And we are working again to actually make it more advantageous for the district to hold this guarantee. So that is it. The floor is open for any questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Trevor. So for a matter of record, I will be abstaining and not engaging in any comments for this particular item due to a conflict of interest, but I will open the floor for my committee members. Any questions or comments about this item? Nothing. I think we're good. Thank you so much, Trevor.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Roberts.
We can prepare for the next presentation, our administrative modernization project, AMP implementation update. Good morning, Chief Jones. And Courtney.
Good morning. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So We're doing this, as always, as a joint presentation between OIT and the Office of Finance, as well as Human Capital, although I'm not sure if she, there she is right there. She's here as well. So just for the sake of brevity and speed, we're going to sort of try to do this in lightning speed. This is the quarterly update on the AMP modernization project. Come on, click. As always, we like to tie it back to what strategic priorities we're facing, and we always support strategic priority 3, which is high quality modernized facilities. And as we know, and we've said 100 times before, we're trying to replace this old obsolete financial system and make sure that we try to move ourselves closer to a single source of the truth. This project is slated to do an upgrade on 3 areas: phase 1, finance; phase 2, budget; and phase 3, human capital. And Courtney, I took your slide, so I'm gonna let you finish up with anything else you want to say.
Thank you, Chief. So yeah, where we are right now, highlighted in green, is phase 1. So this is the initial implementation for the finance module. So you're gonna hear us reference these 3 phases a lot throughout the presentation and just in general. So we haven't yet gotten to phase 2 and phase 3 human capital. Those are next up. So next slide. Thank you. So phase 1, like we said, we're live, but it doesn't mean it's complete. As you know, it's still a work in progress. So we went live on July 10th as we migrated from our old system to Oracle Fusion. So we met our targeted go live date, and the systems that are included in the migration were general ledger, accounts receivable, our projects and grants, contracts, accounts payable, cash management, purchasing, expenses, fixed assets, and supplier portal. So although we're not, all the way there yet, the new Fusion system does give us some capabilities that we're looking forward to. And we're starting to see a little bit of a glimmer of that right now. Some of our enhanced reporting capability, ways that we can look at the data that we haven't been able to before. That's something that we're pretty excited about and been looking forward to. Increased transparency, internal controls. Things are a bit stricter in terms of how they can and cannot be done. So right now for the initial setup, that of course is more of a headache, but once everything is kind of up and running, it does, long-term make for better auditing, better tracking of approvals and practices and requisitions and all the rest of that and payments. And the other thing, that I think is often overlooked on there is, security. So kind of having a system that is more up to date and more state of the art and not, hosted the way that ours was before, and is going to be getting constant updates, both in terms of where it's hosted and also the system software itself, does put us in a better position security-wise long-term for the information that we house within our system. So, next slide. So we've been saying, there are going to be bumps, and there were bumps. So some of the things that we've experienced through the process, I think most prominent, of course, is vendor payments. So we had slower than we would have liked, in terms of payments going out the door. So a lot of this was attributed to a couple different things. One of them mainly is the migration, and we'll talk a little bit about that data migration from the old system. We moved terabytes and terabytes of data, old requisitions, invoices, payments, vendor information, thousands of different categories of data and information into the new system for processing. And we're generating new data and information in the new system as well. So that, of course, is a very complex process. And there were things that happened in that transition that caused our payments to be slowed from how we would have liked them to have been going out the door in the new system. Also, we had workflow issues. So as you can imagine, just folks not having access to be able to put in requisitions or to approve requisitions slows down the processing time. So that ties into our second point, which is limited access. Again, this is tied to some of what we knew we wanted in terms of a single source of truth, multi-tiered access, having our financial systems tied to our HC systems. But part of the limitations on that are that within the structure that we have and the job positions that we have and where people sit, within their roles and all the rest of that, by default, we create access and security approaches. Of course, we know that not everyone kind of operates the same way within the same job title, within the same role. So we've had to do a lot of customization after we've loaded it up, to then make sure that the right people in the right roles have access, tweak it, on an office by office or a school by school basis. An example is like, in some locations, you may have an office assistant doing requisition, and others you may have a secretary, or you may have the principal themselves or an assistant principal. So it could be a variety of different folks taking on different roles. So kind of going through the system, and customizing those roles. We've done a few updates that have, taken care of some of that. The other issue is our system sync. System sync is something that we've had to carry over, essentially because there's some parts of our new Fusion system that still need to communicate with our old HC. So you've heard us mention before, probably things like P-Star's position control. And because of how our position control is, and that is still linked to our old human capital system, which hasn't migrated yet, we're still forced to use some of the financial information in our old Oracle system temporarily. So that means we have to make sure that the data that we're using in our new Fusion system lines up and is, aligned with what's in the old system. And that is a far more complicated process than, it would seem on the surface, just because of the timing and a refresh and how the information is treated in the different systems. Next slide. So the outcome of that, like I said, increased payment processing time. Those data migration issues that I mentioned caused the slowdown in processing, both for the generating of requisitions, purchase orders, which you need to start work, but also for the processing of payments. So it slowed down our processing, our payment processing, as well as our requisition generation processes. Next slide. So what have we done to sort of deal with that? We knew on the onset, and this is no surprise. We've said this throughout the 24-ish months, 21 plus months of the process. Staffing is going to be a big deal. We're going to need to staff up and fill in certain positions. We've worked on backfill. As I think everyone knows, the staffing landscape is not as fluid or as condoning as we would have liked it to be. So we've had difficulty in filling a lot of our technical positions. We've been relying on some of our staffing partners, to provide temps, and we have to go through the process of training staff, getting them up to speed on the new systems, while also training folks on the processes, folks who haven't been exposed to them before. So staffing has been a challenge. Internally for us in finance, also with our partners in IT, and even with our vendors that have been working with us, they've been providing additional supports as well. So we've been trying to ramp that up. A lot of the things that we're doing in terms of solutions require customized work, like kind of going line by line on certain items, case by case on certain things. And some of that is just manual. Like, we wish there were much smarter ways to do those things, like if you can kind of group them in certain ways, but the specifics of individual payments can be very nuanced. So a lot of that is manpower. So we've been trying to increase our manpower, increase our training on the new system. We're also getting, more support from our vendor. Like I said, they're helping us kind of triage a lot of the issues that we've been working through, provide solutions and training for our staff on dealing with those. We've also been trying to prioritize specific payments, so things that are mission critical, putting those to the forefront. We've been reaching out to vendors and provide avenues for vendors to contact us as well, to let us know if they're encountering issues, being more responsive in terms of communications and getting back to folks in a timely manner. So that's been a big part of it for us as well. It's not just, the back end kind of working on getting the resolutions, but those almost don't matter to a certain extent if folks don't know. We've had a number of instances where just kind of bogged down in the processing, where we haven't done a good enough job communicating that, no, your payment actually was processed and it's already out, and, it's already on the way. Or, check your bank, the statement's there, stuff like that. So working on both ends of that transaction is kind of where we are now, enhancing the communication, but the processing capability at the same time. So just as a snapshot, we took this last week, the numbers. So as you can see, we are moving a significant number of invoices. We had over 14,000 invoices paid, of 155 plus million so far. This is from go live in July till now. So the last 2 months, over 1,200 vendors paid. We're continuing to do training. We haven't spoken about it much in this presentation, but training is still a very big deal for us. And training is all encompassing. I think we're historically have not done enough in terms of training materials, like having a repository of information. So that's something that we've been building on through this process with the AMP Academy. So we have a lot more training materials available, quick reference guides that folks can refer to. But we're doing a lot of education, not just for us internally, but also with our vendors as to how they should be participating in the process, having a purchase order before they start work, that sort of thing, working with our schools who do the receiving, letting them know the importance of their role within the process. And as you know, we have new folks within those roles within schools, on a yearly basis. So every new fiscal year, there are new folks to be trained on the different systems and processes. So even without a new ERP, there's a lot of that training that will be taking place anyway. So that's really kind of ramped up, and we actually have more material now because of the process that we're going through with the AMP project to reference folks and to do some more self-training, and we can do support on that training as well. The table below is a snapshot of some of the incidents that we've been tracking. We'd mentioned before that we've changed our triage methodology. So we're using our HEAT system to track our incidents and tickets, which gives us better data and information. We can look at our percentage of issues resolved and how long we're taking to resolve certain items, how we're doing with regards to closing those cases. So this is a bit of a snapshot as to where we are. So as you can see, there's still a number of items outstanding. There's still things coming in on a regular basis as well that we're resolving, but we're trying our best to push those percentages up and increase our response time as far as possible. So we spoke on this a little bit, but I don't think it can be overstated, because we knew kind of going into phase one that we were the sacrificial lamb, so to speak. Going into phase 2 and 3, there are a lot of lessons that we've learned from phase one that can be applied, to that. And the first thing, which I don't think is a surprise to anyone, is really just the need for, qualified folks and folks who are trained and aware and know the system. So we've been working, kudos to our team who, in a time, where, like right now, we have our year-end closing and audits. We have our regular new fiscal year, which is our highest volume period for putting in purchase orders and requisitions. And then on top of that, we have, the AMP transition and then catching up on the backlog of things that, we had issues with because of the transition. So they're going through all of those things at the same time and have been, kind of working their tails off to get things done. A large part of what we do is just making sure that internally our staff, stays aware and motivated, and are, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're getting there. So as we showed with some of the data and information, we're still processing a lot of invoices, we're processing a lot of payments. Is it at the pace that we want it to be? No. And part of what, in phase 2 and 3 will assist us in those go lives and in those implementations is learning from what we've looked at now. So some of those things is the increased manpower demand, both for technical and some of our processing staff. We've been able to get some support, like I said, through third parties and bringing in temps, but long term, that's not a solution. We need to do more in terms of hiring and filling some of our positions internally to sustain that. And that's going to transition to some of the other phases as we look at overlap between phase 1 and 2 and 3. So more staff and more training. One of the things that we also learned is, coming up with the scenarios for our testing was very important. We did a lot of scenario building and testing where it was based on, here's what we do in our daily function. So we test our ability to do our jobs. If I submit this and I put this in here and I process it this way, does it work and does it spit it out? So that's, ideal testing. What we didn't do a lot of, and we realized we need to do more of going forward with the other phases, is the sort of the failure testing. So what happens when things don't work? How long does it take to process the workaround? What are the other contingencies? So things like that, kind of going into the first phase, we didn't know that we need to emphasize as much. We've learned a lot on that in terms of figuring out how we need to develop and build on those things for the other phases. So that's valuable information for us. The other thing is, relying on our vendor, our integration consultant. They have more experience in doing these implementations. For us as a district, it's a once in every 20, 25-year thing. So there are a lot of things that we didn't know. So we have to rely on our vendor to supply that information from their experience with other implementations or just, industry knowledge. So we're relying on them to help fill in those gaps for us, as we move forward.
And Courtney, if you don't mind, I just want to make one emphasis here, and that's this first bullet point you talked about. There, we never, and I'll say personally, never anticipated the sheer volume of other, i.e. non-ESSER work and non-regular work that the school system itself had to deal with. When we would ask our partners in the offices or the schools to help us think through something, they were swamped as well. And, that was a factor that we are really factoring into the next phases, is the realization that they too are doing ESSER work or MDE work or Carowin work. They're being as swamped as much as we are.
Oh. So other things here, we spoke a little bit about the overlap. So there are resources that we use in phase 1 for finance that, of course, you can see would overlap with phase 2 budget. And there are resources in phase 2 and phase 1 for budget that overlap with phase 3 in terms of the human capital and payroll. So, it's just who we are as a district, and we knew going in that, we were understaffed in a lot of areas. We've been for years. So there are a lot of folks, who have multiple roles, multiple jobs, who take part in all these different things. So trying to be cognizant of how, that time is managed, bringing in additional supports, training additional staff, which you've already started working on for phase 2 and 3, so that we don't run into some of those same hiccups in terms of like single points of failure or too many dependencies on specific staff members. The next is the design of training materials. This is actually, it's listed under lesson learned, but it's actually, I think, one of the things that we've done well. It's that we've built up a database, like I said, of training materials, and we've done so in a very fluid manner. So as we've encountered additions, changes, updates, especially with a new system going live, we're tweaking the system, we're changing processes, but we're also in real time updating our training materials to match. So the training materials out the gate are different from the training materials now. So we have a team that's constantly working to update that, constantly making changes to that. But long term, this has to exist outside of just a project like this. Like, we need a long-term repository of training and information that's accessible for our users, for our vendors, for our staff, so that they know how to access and interact with our systems, not just because it's a new AMP implementation, but just as a general course of business. So through this, we're building up that database of information. So going forward, continuing and in fact ramping up some of our comprehensive support. We're still supplementing our staff even further in procurement and accounts payable. Like I said, a lot of what we're doing in terms of catch up, and just to kind of give a sense of scale, we had a backlog of about 3,000 invoices that had to be processed. That's down to about 1,100. So we're getting there, but we still know that the rate at which we're transitioning those things isn't fast enough. So we're still bringing in more staff to help go through those individual items and help process and get payments done. We're ramping up staff in our IT and as well, to support. But a big part of it too is transitioning a lot of the knowledge from our implementer to our internal staff. So our staff becoming more the go-to experts, becoming the first line responders with regards to issues and solutions, I think is a big part of the comprehensive support as we move forward. The other thing is based on what we've learned from phase 1, and I'll highlight one major thing is we know the need for increased testing. We're not going to go into phase 2 and phase 3 without making adjustments based on what we've learned. So we know in phase 2 and phase 3, we want more testing. We want the testing to be closer to the end product. So we're going to build that into the timeline. And we'll talk about some of that in terms of what the revisions will mean for the timeline moving forward. It would be remiss that, we kind of go through the experience of phase 1 and the growing pains, and then we don't adjust the subsequent phases based on the lessons learned. So that's definitely what we intend to do.
So Courtney talked about learning some lessons. So we wanted to show this is the original projected plan. We had finance rolling out by July. We met that date. We had budget rolling out shortly thereafter over the winter months. Then there was HR and payroll was supposed to be shooting for a March 2024 rollout date with Chronos and time attendance being in there. We also had tackled looking at a learning management system and a performance management system early in the project with the thoughts that we would roll those out towards the later part of 24. That was what our original projected timeline that we built 2.5 years ago. Taking all of those lessons that we learned a little while ago, we are currently in process for doing a revised timeline, taking in all those lessons learned, looking at the things that we were supposed to avoid. So I'm gonna pop up a screen that is really just a sample of what we think it's going to look like, but we have not finished the revision yet. What you see, and I will highlight a couple things that you can look at, and if there are questions, you can ask them later. The phase 2 budget tool, just the tool, not the revised processes and so forth, is going to be pushed it will not be this quarter, but we'll push it out until next quarter, November, October of 24 instead of 23. We realized that the data archiving and data saving, while I'm tongue-tied this morning, is much, much larger than we had initially anticipated, and the problem is much harder. We've had a couple of vendors in here helping us look at this, and we realized that time frame has to be stretched out. With those things in mind, that is forcing us to move the payroll rollout not till April of 24, but more like January of 25. May not be exactly that yet. We don't know. We're still doing a lot of planning with both the end users and the vendors. So you'll see that what we've done here is we've given you just a visual of what we think the new revised timeline will be. The reason we're giving it to you now is because we realized this was the last update before the December update, and we didn't want to tell you all of this in December. We wanted to give you a sense of where it looks like it's falling out right now. We think we'll probably roll out the time clocks next year so that people can get used to it, but actually hold off on the actual payroll, just because we all know payroll is absolutely vital and very tricky with all the different pay things. So this is just a sample of what we may finalize, come to a final resolution of. You will notice that the performance management system at the bottom, that is still slated for the middle of 24, just because it's crucial to get that up and running for a number of reasons. And we decided that it made more sense to put a little additional focus on that and to defocus the learning management system for now until we can make a final selection and build a team around it. So there's a lot of moving parts here. Lots of things have moved, and they're all moved around, some up, some back, and it's all been because of the lessons learned from phase 1 and trying to make sure that we don't have, first of all, a repeat of anything that was bad, and that we capitalize on everything that was good. And a quick overview. Courtney has said this several times, and I'm glad he said it a couple times, because one of the things that we knew going into this, and we made a conscious decision to invest a tremendous amount of time and money and effort into building a training academy. This is a big, complicated system. We are building the academy so that we can actually apply this to other systems as well. So we so far have run about 2,500 users through the various roles. We have built training videos. We have built online guides so that as you're actually using the software, sometimes if you just can't remember what the next step is, it will prompt you to do that. All of this is small in comparison to what it will ultimately be, because we're going to finish doing this with AMP for the next 2 phases, And then we're going to start rolling other systems into the training academy so that we can have a single place for training, for FAQs, for standard operating procedures, all of those types of things. And they all sort of got their start because of the work we're doing here with the ANT program.
Chris Doherty here, Chief Financial Officer. Just to add to Chief Jones and what Courtney have said, hopefully what the board and the public is getting is that we are being very open and upfront with the challenges that we've experienced. At the same time, we also know that the board members in particular sometimes do appropriately hear from folks who are disgruntled or have experienced delays. And we understand that. We do know, and we put vendor payments up there on the front of the presentation that we're working on. At the same time, the biggest challenges for us with a mid-July go live chronologically were the always challenging successful start of a new school year. So we, even in a quote normal year, whatever that is anymore, school startup has a lot of moving parts. And the new system starting in mid-July was another X factor. There were no schools that did not start on time due to any payment issues. Bus contracts, for example, all went successfully. Payments were made. Large vendors like Office Depot, that all schools can access our Office Depot contract to get their rooms ready, to get the halls ready, to get supply closets replenished. All that happened with the new system because of the strike forces and additional person power that we've applied to that. We are very sensitive to vendor late payment. We absolutely have a all hands on deck attitude towards that. It is not imagining like a pay clerk just working through his or her inbox. We are doing triage all day, every day, and board members may in fact hear from certain vendors about late payment, and we own that. At the same time, when someone is on a multi-hour flight delay, they don't really take much comfort in hearing about the airline's on-time delivery or arrival percentage. But the new system is working. And Courtney said this briefly. Since our go live, we have paid over 1,250 vendors in the new system, and we've paid over $155 million. We know that to a vendor who is experiencing late payment, they're either indifferent to those numbers or they're frustrated that they're not in those numbers. So we get that it's cold comfort to a vendor who's experiencing late payment, but we do want the board to know and the public to know that the new system is appropriately paying large amounts of vendors and large dollar figures, even as we work through those case-specific examples of why an individual vendor might be experiencing late payment. So we just want to put it out there, both the good and the bad. But the payment system is in fact working. One other, I know Chair Roberts is probably tapping her watch. We definitely have a kind of war room-like environment here. We're working together. We're all we've cut down on remote work so that we can all be feet away from each other as we plow through all of the backlog in vendor payments as we get up and running on all cylinders with the new Fusion system. So next slide, please. And also, and we're not trying to be overly positive, but we are starting to get our sea legs with the new system. There are things that the new system can do better. We're not really seeing them or appreciating them in our kind of tunnel vision on getting people paid and getting the system up and running. It is a lot more clicks. It is a lot more work per requisition, per invoice, per funds check, per payment. And those clicks add up when you have thousands of vendors and millions of dollars of payment. But we are experiencing very normal, predictable growing pains with a new complex system. And we're actually seeing some things that we can do better, quicker, and more elegantly in the new system than the old. which we don't tell that to vendors who are experiencing late payment, but we do want folks to know that we had to make this switch, and it will be a better system once we get through these bumps.
Any questions?
Thank you all so much for the presentation. While we are very restricted on time, I do want to open the floor for questions if we have any. I would ask that we keep it to one question and also allow for staff to get back in writing if necessary. Commissioner Coy.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear and see this update. I don't know how much other commissioners have dug into it, but this has been something over the past year that I certainly have tried to show up and see and pay attention to. So I appreciate all the updates. One of my questions that I want to ask here, and I will, I guess, limit it down to sort of one question, does relate to trainings and observations or the opportunity to show up. And thinking about the role of a commissioner, you know, my specific question is what trainings would be appropriate for board members to have within the systems that are being built? In other words, one critical aspect of a role of a commissioner does relate to procurement review, and it's and approval, right, of procurement requests. But it's often something as a responsibility that I feel is inherently complicated, and frankly, that as a new commissioner coming in a year ago, there wasn't very much sort of guidance, direction, insight. It was sort of like, here's the procurement request. What do you think about that? You know, and I think there could be more here, and I would love to work closely. So it's not a question I'm looking for a response right now, but maybe it's saying I would love to spend time working with you all to think about what.
Can we land the plane? We need to move forward. What is the ask?
Can I spend time with you all thinking about what is it that commissioners should know and be able to see and understand from the system as it relates to procurement for items?
Did the team get that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
Did
did.
board staff get that? Tanisha, Dr. Jenkins, as a follow-up?
Yes, we have it.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the team.
Thank you.
I want to transition us because we still have a number of other items to get through. So Commissioner Coy, you can expect a follow-up on your ask. Thank you to the team. We can move forward with the 2023 Comprehensive Maintenance Plan. Good morning.
So this is Maureen. Monique had put in a request to switch the order so that the CIP went before the CMP. Is that, are we able to make that?
I got that request, but for the sake of time, we can move forward with whichever order you all need.
Great, I'll go ahead first then. Give me a second to share my screen. All right. Good morning. My name is Maureen Gershberg. I'm the Director of Facilities Planning and Real Estate, and today we're going to go over the FY25 Capital Improvement Program, also known as the CIP. This aligns with Board Priority 3. The CIP is presented every fall, and then we give an update at the end of spring every year. So a couple of slides might look familiar just because we want to make sure we're being continuous with how we're presenting it. And one of the recent updates that we've done is while the CIP is a very specific pot of money for funding our school building projects, there are multiple pots that help feed into our capital plan. And so we will be focusing specifically on CIP today, but we're including all the other capital projects that are going on as well, so that we have we can present a full view of the capital program at City Schools. We'll go over facility conditions and investments, the different funding sources, a summary of projects, and then looking forward. We like to start with this slide because we only receive a certain amount of money for both maintenance and capital. And when you look at industry standards and what our existing portfolio is, there's a huge shortfall and an annual combined deficit of $204 million when you look at what's needed and what we actually have. So we have to keep that gap in mind when we're looking at the different project requests and the priorities, since what we end up with, the amount of money, is a lot less than what is actually needed. We also like to make sure that folks are aware, just kind of what other jurisdictions are getting in Maryland. When we talk about some of our project costs, it's like, wow, it's millions of dollars. But when you look at what other local jurisdictions are providing to their school systems, so like Montgomery County, yes, they have over twice the amount of students than us, but their local funds are much higher than what we receive. And, you know, that's Montgomery County. They're able to do that. But we just like to put that in perspective of, again, how limited we are in terms of the available funds for our capital programs. Funding decisions for the CIP and also for all capital projects are informed both by physical systems and district priorities. An example of this might say, okay, we know that an HVAC unit at Briscoe, it needs to be replaced. It's past its lifespan. But district priorities, we know that we have the high school plan, that Frederick Douglass is going to be doing a combined campus with Briscoe and supposed to be opening in 2026. And so we know that we wouldn't be requesting a project to replace that HVAC system. And we knew that several years ago when we first put out that high school plan. So we do this balance of, again, those actual hard reports and numbers with district priorities to help make decisions. All right, so here we're going to get a little weedy. These are the different pots of money. So while there is the CIP specifically on here, there's also Healthy Schools, Built to Learn, a pass-through grant, and then those are the state funds. The non-state funds are local money, ESSER, which is federal, and then 21st Century, which was the state did not have the jurisdiction over that the way they do with Built to Learn. The coloring is important here because we have pots of money that are reoccurring every year. So that's a nice steady income that we can rely on to be reoccurring. The Healthy Schools and ESSER, those were limited pots of money. So while they were around for about 2 years each, actually Healthy Schools is a couple more than that, there is a termination point. And so we cannot rely on that as a steady income stream. And then the beige colors, those are just one-time cash infusions. So when we go think back to that earlier slide where we said, all right, we're short 204 million combined for both capital and maintenance. And you might say, oh, well, look at all this money that we got in the Built to Learn and Healthy Schools. But it's like, okay, we had that one-time infusion, but it's not reoccurring. Reoccurring is our state funds from the CIP. Reoccurring are our local funds, which are historically 19 million. And the CIP has historically been about 35 million. Last year, they gave an extra 11 million after Governor Moore freed up some extra funds, but just the amount of money that we can depend on in the future years is quite limited. The one-time and several-time infusions of the green and the beige ones are important, but again, they are limited. The blues, those are the reoccurring that we are pretty much like the backbone of our capital planning. And I'll try and speed it up. So this is a timeline. You can see, again, that CIP every year. Healthy Schools, it's going to be limited. That I think that's going to be terminating in FY26. ESSER, that's just that was two-time cash infusions that must be spent by September 2024, and the remainders are just one-time infusions. When we determine our CIP project list, we start with the projects that were not funded from the previous year. So you can see there was 12. We then carry over projects that might have multiple years of funding, such as our major projects like Furley and Armistead. We pull out projects that can be covered by a different pot of money, specifically Healthy Schools, and then we add in projects where our computerized maintenance management system, otherwise known as CMMS, that Monique will speak to, it might have flagged as a system being at the end of its life cycle or needing replacement because of so much repair. We then do a final review to make sure that the list is meeting district priorities. This is a map showing the geographic distribution of our projects for the CIP requests, overlaid on the Community Conditions Index, which is a composite index comprised of 6 socioeconomic indicators used to categorize Baltimore City communities based on historic investment in order to inform equitable outcomes. And we have a really good chapter on this tool within our CEF&P if anyone wants to reach out later. We can provide that link. It's also on the website. But we use this tool to help ensure that we are providing an equitable lens to our project scopes and locations. And that's just a copy of that. This is a map showing all the other projects on there except for ESSER, because again, while this presentation is focused on CIP, we want to make sure we're giving the full view of our capital program. We're not including ESSER on here because that's 73 projects, and so the map gets quite busy then. These are those ESSER projects, and then our appendix has a map with every single project. So looking forward, we know air conditioning is always a topic that we like to give updates on. So we've completed 64 of the original 75 projects for AC within our schools. And then the remaining ones have a plan to address them, the 11 remaining ones, either through major construction projects or pending systems projects. So the systemic projects are different than the major projects. Systemic ones are like HVAC, roofs, they're individual pieces of the school versus a major project, which is a full renovation or a full replacement. So the systems projects that are looking forward, we have our 73 ESSER projects that are completed and underway. We had, in this past fiscal year, we had 24 Healthy Schools projects, and then there's 39 CIP systems projects that we'll be submitting this year. So those are pending IAC approval. Here's an update on the openings that we have coming up and ones that are going to be requested. So we have two-story modulars occurring. We have two remaining 21st century buildings, plus the addition of Frederick Douglass and Briscoe for a total of 3. We have 4 replacement CIP projects or renovations, and then the high school plan for Built to Learn projects. We also, in this year's CIP, similar to last year, are putting in requests for Ben Franklin and Edmondson. Here are the major projects that are underway: Marie G. Faring, Furley, Northeast, and Armistead. Those projects were with CIP funding. These projects are from different sources of funds. So City Springs is going to be a combination of funds from the city and then also from Build to Learn. Frederick Douglass is that phase 2 of 21st century funding. City College and Poly Western are going to be Built to Learn. We have the 21st century projects that are finishing up, Cross Country, which is opening this January, and then Commodore John Rogers, which is slated for August 2025. And as I mentioned, we're putting in a request again for Ben Franklin and Edmondson. We requested them last year, but Ben Franklin received a grade of B, which means the state agrees with the need for it. But just when you look at the amount of funding that we have requested, specifically with our major projects that require multiple years of funding, they're just not sure that, given the historic amount that we do receive, that we would be able to sustain that project going out. So Ben Franklin received a B. So we're submitting it just to keep sure that it stays on the radar, because this is a priority. Both these schools are part of our high school plan, but they're not part of that Built to Learn funding pot. And then Edmondson received a grade of C last year, and so that means the state doesn't quite agree with us that the need is there. So we are continuing to work with them to show how not only is the need there, but this helps make the school district more efficient. It would allow us to consolidate from 2 buildings to 1, which is definitely not ideal, having students cross the street to access their classes. So with that, we're looking for approval to request the FY 2025 CIP projects. Any questions?
Yeah, just one from me, Madam Chair.
Okay.
It's been pretty dubious in terms of getting money from the state. You're asking the state for 190 million. I guess historically, you've gotten less than 50.
Yeah.
So I guess you, like you always do you have your second plan in terms of how you're going to use it if you don't get the 190?
We absolutely will not get the 190. We always request more, and not just a little more, a lot more, just because the need is there. And
it's also fair. It's also fair too. I mean, point that out. It's just not need, it's the fairness issue. So, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so while the need is there, we are constantly looking at the various pots of money that might be available to help close in that gap. But in general, yeah, we aren't getting 190 million. Cindy, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I just want to add to a couple of things quickly. Cindy Smith, Executive Director for Planning, Design, and Construction. All of our projects are submitted in a priority order, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they will fund them in the priority order. They don't always, but that's usually our hope, is that they fund them in that priority order. And then we just, list the next ones the following year. And occasionally, if something comes in under bid, which hasn't been happening a lot lately in the current environment, but has in the past, then we end up with money in a reserve contingency pot that we might be able to apply to a next project down the list also if they've evaluated it. So there are a couple intentions behind always listing more, not just showing that we obviously have the need and that is what we should be getting.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my committee, for the sake of time, to submit all questions in writing for the capital improvement programs presentation. We will transition to the comprehensive maintenance plan, the CMP presentation now. Will that be Cindy? Oh, that's Monique. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? All right, I'm going to share my screen here, and we are going to rock and roll. All right, so good morning, everyone. I am Monique Rumo, the Executive Director of Operations, here to present the annual CMP presentation. It applies to board priorities 2 and 3. I want to highlight that this is the first year that we have included board priority 2, because we do believe that in addition to investing in facilities, that we should also be investing in our staff, and we'll get into that later on in the presentation. And so this agenda just quickly walks everyone through the contents of the presentation. And so the purpose of the CMP is that we demonstrate the overview of our maintenance plan. It's actually a requirement of all LEAs to submit annually in the state of Maryland. And we want to make sure that we take the opportunity to highlight our continuing improvements and new initiatives. One of the things that we added in 2020 for this presentation are guiding principles. It's also a requirement of all LEAs. But what it articulates is the 4 areas that we focus in on, which is improving staff and improving our investment in staff and facilities, making evidence-based decisions, along with the other things that you see here. We also include our strategic focus areas. These aren't arbitrary. These are competency areas that are pulled from the Association of Physical Plant Administrators. They have several competencies, but we focus in on the areas that we believe are things that are within our control. And so last year we introduced this slide just to show that we do have a strategic direction and that there are specific actions that we're taking. We're focused on our organizational development, preventive maintenance plan, and project prioritization for these different reasons. And how are we tracking the actions that we're taking? We have a number of KPIs that we're responsible to the state for, but we're making sure that we are rooted in something that we can point to, which are the APPA standards, which supports LEAs for showing how we demonstrate our level of service to schools, but also the maintenance effectiveness assessments, which are done by the state annually. They do about a quarter of our district, and so all of our school buildings are usually assessed on a 4-year cycle. Last fiscal year 2023, we adopted this structure under Dr. Washington, our COO, where there are 3 executive directors, and we support different bodies of work. The CMP specifically highlights the work that sits under Bill Levy, who is the executive director of facilities, and he's got 3 directors. Mr. Anthony Pena is no longer acting. He's actually in position full-time. There are 10 teams that report up to them, doing a number of work being supported by in-house and contractual staff. And this slide just demonstrates the number of buildings that the operations team supports. This does include unoccupied buildings because once we move or close programs, we're still responsible for those unoccupied buildings, which is about 5 of them at this time, until they're handed over to the city, or we hold on to them for different initiatives that we have, such as the 21st Century Program and the high school plan that was discussed in the CIP presentation. We have 315 staff. It would look as though that is a high number of vacancies, but we're going to get into what we have been focusing on in terms of our investment in staff. And then this just shows our operating budget from last year and the breakout on how those funds are utilized. This is the first year we're actually showing the funding source. We thought it was important because we get into obstacles and missing resources. And so we do try to supplement our budget where we can if there are grants and programs available. So the school safety grant, Aging Schools program, that is something we use annually. We do not count this inside of our budget because we don't know if it's going to be guaranteed. ESSER funds, we would not typically count this in our budget, but we did this year because there was a significant investment from at the chief level to put funds into our buildings. We've spoken to other LEAs and they did not get the type of support that we've gotten from our district to focus ESSER funds with improving building systems across the district. And then of course, we're primarily funded through our general operating funds. You saw a portion of this in the CIP presentation. We've been using this probably for the last several years. You see what we're funded last year. That's a combined budget between maintenance and capital of $154 million. But industry standard says that we should be at a combined annual budget at 358. Again, it's not something that's arbitrary. This comes from a national standard where they are saying based upon the amount of square footage you manage, this is what you should be funded annually. How this shows up when we aren't sufficiently funded, it shows up in our maintenance efforts and in our building conditions. But what I really want to hone in on is that it's not something that's just behind doors and walls or in the floor. These are things that are seen and felt. So not being sufficiently funded, we can't do all the things that we should do because it is fair, Commissioner Reed, that we should be able to provide the maintenance services and the capital services to our schools, students, and staff and communities. But let's get into our facilities outcomes. So earlier you saw that we maintain 139 buildings, our staffing, this is our funding. How does that play out every day? So that is broken out between what we're maintaining in our buildings with our staff and our resources. About 90% of our work is across these categories. And if you notice, a third of our efforts go into our HVAC maintenance. This is significant because if you recall in 2018, we had that cold snap, a number of buildings went down. There has been, well, over half of our buildings, there has been a significant emphasis on our investment and our focus in HVAC work, which includes our building automation work that we're doing so that we can see remotely into our buildings and be proactive instead of reactive, waiting for someone to say what's going on. In the bottom left corner, last year we started to show the percentage of our breakout between what's done by contractors and in-house staff. This is important because of our lack of funding, and unlike other LEAs, we don't have a one-to-one ratio with our in-house staff doing maintenance, one person focused on one building. We are supplemented with contractual staff, and so it's important for us to show that split in terms of the work. Preventive maintenance practices, we're going to get into this later, but it is important to show that we are actively and proactively maintaining our systems. So on the right side, you see the graphic that shows in FY23, we were at 45%. That same time last year, we were at 22%. It means that we were in a reactive state. So we have substantially moved the amount of work that we're doing in preventive maintenance. FY22, 22% meant that we were constantly that we were regularly in a firefighting state. The industry standard says that we should be somewhere in that 75 to 100% range. But based upon CMMS global data for all K-12 users, the top 20% of users are 43% with their preventive maintenance practices. So right now we are exceeding global users, and a worthy goal that we're going for is this 10% range where our maintenance practices are in that 50 to 75% range, which means that we are more proactive than reactive. And you can see that we're moving in that direction. So you're probably asking, how did you guys move the scale that much? Well, we're going to take it back to when I talked earlier about our strategic actions. We're focusing on what is within our control: organizational development and our preventive maintenance practices. And again, for these specific reasons. So in terms of organizational development, I want to make sure that we're all grounded in why we're focusing on that, and take it back to our guiding principles and our strategic actions so that you can see what that specific action is supporting. So we are improving our investment in our staff. This is critical because it improves the engagement of our folks, productivity, and employee retention. We have created career paths and ladders for our staff, so in order to also create a sustainable workforce. And so prior to July of 2017, we had entry-level positions and primarily supervisory level positions across these different groups across operations. We spent 6 months in the field learning our structure, what folks are doing. And after that, we ended up focusing in on our building automation and our building maintenance workers. We ended up restructuring in the field, creating repair regions so we can improve our efficiency. We also focused in on custodial work because we recognized that school leaders needed support in that area. And then between 2020 and 2021, we started some additional focus on our pest management workers. We continue to focus on building automation, and then we began to add in additional positions like the advanced staff for our specialty trades like painters and welders and plumbers. And then today to present, we have implemented an intern and apprenticeship program. We now have from at least entry level to senior managers. We now have a career path for a number of our folks in operations. This is critical because we need a pipeline, because in this body of work, there is a severe shortage of workers. And I'm going to hone in on our operations intern and apprentice program, because although this wasn't the first year that we had it, it was the first year where we really formalized it. And We had 21 students participate in it. We had 10 of our city schools, high schools represented. 5 of the students in the program are continuing with us now so that they can get their CTE credits. And we have another student that's continuing on with us as an intern with our maintenance teams. And I do want to give a quick shout out to YouthWorks, to our CTE program, Adenike and Naisha Dorsey, because they really worked with helping us to get students into our internal internship program. And that was run by Latasha Moretti and Don Ashbury here in operations. I want to quickly highlight this person in red, Kanye Anderson, because he is our first student to receive a full-time position as an employee of city schools by going through our program. He started on September 11th, and he is a building maintenance worker working under Bill Levy and Anthony Pena. It was exciting. In the closing ceremony, all the students got backpacks, but when he stepped up, they said, we said, we are giving you a full-time position. You're not getting a backpack. Come work for us. And so we worked with our HC partners. He didn't have to interview because he had already interviewed as an intern, and he came on board with us. Worth celebrating. All right. The next thing I want to highlight is our preventive maintenance program, and this will go by pretty quickly. Again, just grounding us in our guiding principles and then our 2 strategic focus areas that this is meeting. So it is important that we have an LEA like ours that is short in resources and funding, has an intense PM program, because it helps us with sustaining our older systems in the absence of that funding. And so you saw earlier that we moved our PM work order practices, or our PM work orders, from just 22% of the work to 45%. That's a 105% increase. What does that mean? It means that we are moving from reactive or fire work to a proactive approach in order to make sure that we aren't just chasing failing systems, but that we are making sure that they maintain until we're able to replace them through our CIP program. And so just a quick stat, we close 93% of our PM work orders within 30 days. That is actually excellent, because in comparison to global users that are doing the same amount of work, we exceed our peer medians, where 82% of K-12 users are closing their PM work orders in under 30 days. Why this is important, our PM program is important because you can see that we are forced to maintain systems longer than their life cycle. This is just a snapshot of some of the systems. And some might say, well, I would have expected us to have more than 17 boilers or 12 chillers be on their life cycle. The reason why you don't see as many as you would think beyond their life cycle is because of our CIP program. Those systems don't qualify for capital funding on their own, but through the CIP program, we're able to group them together and do these systemic projects that allows us to replace them as a group instead of individually. I do want to flag that we still have $5.5 billion in aging infrastructure. That's why we're always making sure that we highlight that we aren't sufficiently funded, and that if we're making any ask of anyone, that we are asking that you fight for funding for capital and maintenance program. And so just the takeaways that I want to flag for everyone that's listening is that I hope you gained an understanding of our guiding principles and our strategic focus areas, that you've understood, at least at a high level, our staffing and resource management, and grasp why it's critical that we balance our resources and our limitations with our maintenance needs, and we are prioritizing our preventive maintenance practices. And then that you understand our improvement initiatives, to improve our efficiency and extend the life cycle of our building systems because of the lack of funding. And that concludes the presentation. Are there any questions?
you so much for the presentation, Monique.
Pleasure.
I'll open the floor to my committee. Is there a question from anyone for this presentation? No? Okay, I will not belabor this. Thank you so much for the presentation, Monique.
Thank you.
If there are any follow-up questions for my committee members, please feel free to submit it or follow up through the board office. We will now transition to the fiscal year 25 budget milestone calendar presentation. Hello, Courtney again. Courtney, you're muted.
All right. How about now?
Perfect.
Okay. I think somebody muted me. All right. I had to do the *6, but we'll be brief. So this is the kickoff for the FY25 budget process. So I know how much fun we had last go around, so we couldn't wait to get started with the new one. But this is essentially the high-level milestone calendar and timeline for the budget process. So it has some of our key dates. We have, a few different versions of our timeline. There's a far more detailed, step-by-step process, and there's also what we call kind of like the Goldilocks calendar, which is somewhere in between. It's not as much detail, but it does have some more nuance. This one is the highest level. So it's our budget launch date, like when the school tools open, when we're presenting to the board. We have some proposed dates in there for the spring and fall budget forums, which we'll get verified with the board as well. And it's just some of our school interaction dates, like our budget collaboratives and budget approval process. So it's at a pretty high level. The only things I would point out here, part of the process this year, we're kind of beginning with a look at, as you know, we've had unprecedented funding in terms of our ESSER grants over the last few years. So what that transition looks like is a big part of the budget cycle for FY25. So that's something we've been working on throughout the summer, and we'll continue working on throughout the process. There are also some subgroups of activities within the process that we're trying to move up in the timeline a little bit. To give us some more time, sort of like the enrollment projections, some of our internal projections and analysis that we're doing in preparation for the budget development. But outside of that, there aren't significant edits to these high-level dates at this point. But this is just making sure that we share the calendar and the timeline so everyone has it, and we're going to have it on board docs and available. And of course, in our future updates that we're going to do monthly, if there are any changes, we'll make sure we highlight those for the board as well, so that we can make adjustments to the calendar. But that's it for this phase and this point in time. Any questions?
I'll open the floor to my colleagues. Are there any questions around the proposed budget milestone calendar? Hearing none, thank you so much for the overview. We look forward to seeing the rollout of this year's budget cycle. Courtney and team.
Thank you.
Will transition us to the compliance reports. The following compliance reports are uploaded in board docs. Compliance report DBCA, long range financial planning. Compliance report DCB, debt management. Compliance report GBM, temporary employment. And compliance report EAB, disclosure of financial impropriety and improper conduct, whistleblower policy. I'll open the floor for questions from any of my colleagues, questions or remarks or any of the named compliance reports. I see one hand, Commissioner Coy.
Thank you. As it relates to the temporary employment compliance report, I noticed a number of schools had a lot of temporary employees and others had few. My question is, to what degree are some of the schools utilizing temporary employees as if effective permanent employees And to what degree is the temporary employee classification a real representation that there is, I guess, temporary employees, if that makes sense? The report doesn't make as much sense to me about that variance. I'm trying to understand a little bit more, I guess is what I'm asking.
Good morning, Commissioner Coy. Thanks for that question. So the report reflects temps who are employed by city schools, with city schools being the employer. It does not include temps that are coming from a temp agency or some other employer. And so I think a lot of the discrepancies we're seeing across schools have to do with that and which type of temps schools are using. Although there is some variation across schools in who is using temps and for what purposes, depending on tutoring programs, arts enrichment. There are a variety of different uses that they've had temps for, especially during the recovery time. To your question about are schools employing temps for longer than the intended time frame of a temp, I believe that yes, they are. And that is something that Human Capital is looking to work with schools on during the budget process this year, so that if there is a long-term need, we can actually convert some of these temp positions into real positions that are permanent, that are benefits eligible, that schools have now that they have greater funding and more stable funding with Kerwin. Ben, were you going to layer in something? I saw you come on.
Nope.
Commissioner Coy,
That answers that question. I have another question about another report.
okay.
In terms of EAB policy compliance report, it outlines a number of whistleblower submissions. My question is, how does the reported rate for this time period compare to prior years? Trying to understand a little bit of context for, what is the rate of submissions or the volume from a year over year?
I'll need to follow up with you on that. Labor Relations compiles those statistics over the years, and Jerome Jones is out on vacation starting today for the next week. So we will get back to you on that of year over year, how whistleblower activity has changed over time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. We are going to transition to, I believe, Tanisha, we have one public comment this morning, this afternoon, this morning.
Okay.
Morning,
I'm
Zach.
sorry, I was struggling with my mute button.
good.
Yes, we
worries.
have one individual signed up for public comment today. And I see Mr. Taylor is here. Welcome, sir.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. So good morning, commissioners. My name is Zach Taylor. I'm the treasurer with the BTU and appreciate the conversation today. Just to speak briefly on the temps issue, it is something that we also will be following up on with some information requests to Human Capital. We have some similar concerns, both at schools as well as certain offices in central office itself. And we've had some people reach out about, full-time employment after being at the district for 2 years in a temp status and wanting to make sure that they have access to healthcare, have the protection of a contract that just clearly lays out the employment conditions. And these are people who have been at city schools for over a year, in some cases much longer than that. Also, just wanted to share regarding the maintenance plan. During recent negotiations, BTU offered a revised proposal. I'm not sure what's been shared with you, that would just ask that the district, when they replace doors with doors that lock internally and externally. Again, this is the #1 recommendation of the Sandy Hook Commission for Safe Schools. And that was rejected by your board's negotiators. It was a revised proposal. It wasn't a wholesale replacement. It was just as new replacements happen in the normal course of business or new installations happen. That was one of our proposals. And again, that was rejected. Additionally, regarding maintenance, we made a proposal to have well-lit parking lots. Some of our parking lots are very dark, and with winter coming, staff feel it when they leave buildings at 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And we have had a number of schools, and we've worked with the district on this at certain schools, but we've had some schools where it's really stood out, where we've had cars that have been stolen, burglarized, vandalized. We had one school where several cars had their catalytic converters stolen over the course of a few weeks. Well-lit parking lots, it's a common feature in collective bargaining agreements. And again, this was rejected by your negotiators, and it's something that we just hope we can make progress on. Staff, students, families, all of these are issues that we have heard from more than just our bargaining unit. Then very briefly, just turning to AMP, we are very excited about having a new system for self-service. We're glad to hear those improvements are happening. We do have continued issues with having that single source of truth. When we click around self-service, my pay shows up in one area as a certain dollar amount and in another area as a different amount. And it shows where I am on the career ladder differently. And it's especially painful at the beginning of the year. And that's right now. And we know human capital, the BTU, we're all getting flooded with this concern. It's extremely difficult to track. We also have some of the similar issues that vendors face regarding late payments. We have this for pay raises. We haven't received all our pay raises for this school year yet. We're not going to get them till October. In the past, it's often happened in November, December. Sometimes we have other late payment issues. As you all know, when a private business fails to pay staff on time, in certain cases, it's a crime. The state, when they don't pay their employees on time, they also face penalties by law. And we know that there aren't current laws that hold school systems to the same account. And we are considering supporting legislation because I've been at the BTU since 2019. I've been working in the district since 2007. These issues haven't gone away. In some ways, they've become worse, and we need this to improve. Additionally, stipend payments for coaching, payments for other roles, they happen really, really late, and it's not well explained on our paychecks. So one of our proposals to you all was just you will label it on a paycheck. What is the stipend for? Because they happen so late, and you'll try to do it within 2 pay periods. Both of those were rejected. We even switched the language just to say every effort. You're just going to try. You're going to try to make that work. You're going to try to put the label on a pay stub. And that was also rejected. And this is really frustrating. It's disheartening. We spend a lot of time trying to just deal with, are we being paid correctly? And what is this pay for? And it distracts us. It distracts us from what we need to do, what we want our attention to be on. It distracts us from our schools. So we hope we can make improvement here. And again, these were common sense proposals, just trying to fix things. So hopefully we can come together and make the progress we need. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing forth comments today, Zach. We are now going to transition to procurement.
Hi, my name is Catherine Kamenecki, and I am standing in for Shabray Matthews this morning, who's has an appointment. So the first item on the agenda is section 1101, and the CEO requests the board's approval of a contract with DonorsChoose.org to provide funding for teacher-led projects aligned with city schools' academic goals and priorities. The estimated total contract amount for this award is $1 million, and the term is September 27th, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. And this contract with DonorsChoose.org will allow city schools to fully support teachers in the use of the DonorsChoose.org platform, ensuring safety and security throughout the resource fulfillment process, and also align teacher-led efforts with city schools' strategic priorities.
Catherine, any questions from the committee, Coy?
Yes, and actually I remember as a city school a teacher using DonorsChoose back in the day to get some items for my classroom. My question is, because I don't remember there being payment for it, either as an individual using it or that the district at that point in time was paying for using it. It sounds like there's some of these additional supports that are designed on a per teacher using it basis. And I just want to understand a little bit more about that, as well as, if a full $1 million was spent, if that many teachers used it, what would we anticipate being the return on that? How much, additional resources are coming in, and maybe even any historical information about how much do we know about how teachers have used, if we even know those types of details in past years.
Hi, I'm Seema Shaw Nelson. I'm Dr. Santelisa's special assistant, and I'm the author of the board letter. To answer your question, those $300 go towards the teacher's project. So a teacher can propose a project up to $600, and $300 is automatically funded. And so the data from Donors Choose shows us that when there is already funding on a project, it's more likely to get the full funding after that. So that's the idea, is that every $300 we put into it, our teachers get $600 of materials. Does that help answer the question, or was there more?
No, that does provide some clarity. So it's really a one-to-one of funding the projects, but is then increasing the likelihood that other funders on the platform may finish the up to that requested amount.
Exactly. Yes.
How will teachers be, I guess, selected? This is limited in terms of all teachers cannot participate in this. Has there been a sort of thought process about how teachers either will be notified or selected to be receiving this? Is it a first come, first serve?
So all teachers will be able to apply. So that's the $1 million. We will be paying, for each teacher application that is approved, then we will be invoiced for $300 per application. So that's why it's up to $1 million, and that'll fund at least 80% of the teachers, given that just the experience that Donors Choose have in doing this in other LEAs and in other states, that is the very highest end of response rates that they've gotten.
Thank you. And we can move forward.
All right, the next item is 1102, and the Chief of Staff requests the board's approval of a contract with BSN Sports to continue to provide Under Armour athletic apparel and accessories to Baltimore City Public Schools. The estimated annual amount of the contract is $500,000, and the contract term is July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2028.
Any questions from the committee? McCoy?
It references in this that Under Armour has done a lot over the years, and I was not able to go in person to some of the recent events, but no, Commissioner Reed was there, and they have absolutely done a tremendous amount. Is this contract new, or is this sort of a continuation of previous sort of spending levels that have occurred previously in addition to the donated, or is there sort of a transition here where this is new, that we are purchasing additional equipment and uniforms, etc.?
So thank you for the question, Commissioner Coy. I'm here with Kim Coleman, my special assistant, who's been spearheading this development of this and leads our relationship with Under Armour. So this is just an updated agreement with them. So we've had, we've had an existing MOU with them that needs to be updated. There are changes to the terms of the agreement. As you said, this partnership started out as just a uniform. It was a uniform donation to our schools, across all schools, all varsity teams, all sports, and both genders, which was a huge benefit to the school system, given the challenges of our schools keeping up with uniforms, and so giving quality uniforms to our young people that really reflect an investment in them and make them feel valued. It's grown from that to include some of the facilities pieces that you mentioned. So from small grants, where they give schools individual grants to do things like weight rooms or gyms, to work they do with Heart of America to do kind of full school renovations. We do those investments in schools that are receiving students from closing schools. That's one of our longstanding priorities. believes that those schools should get priority investments. And then also they did all our high school gyms recently. So they redid the pads, they redid the floors. I think you were at one of the ribbon cuttings for that one. And then they do work with our coaches and our athletic directors. They do professional learning for them. And then also have a student athletic council made up of 2 athletes, student athletes from each school who really meet with Under Armour and advise and get opportunities to meet with Kevin Plank, for example, or go to the Steph Curry showcase that Under Armour just did. So this is a really robust partnership that's focused on both our wholeness aspect of our blueprint as well as our leadership aspect of our blueprint. It needs to be updated to reflect new terms of the agreement, and because the other one, the date was expiring on the old MOU. So under this new agreement, so under the old agreement, Under Armour has provided 2 rounds of uniforms. So they did the initial one for all sports, and then they just recently finished their second round. So under this agreement, they're committed to do replacements of uniforms every 3 to 5 years for all sports, and are going to start the 3rd round fairly soon. And then also there will be in addition to the uniforms that they provide for the schools, each school will get an allotment, a per pupil allotment that they can spend if the school chooses, and this is at the school's discretion, if they choose that they want to supplement the Under Armour provided uniform with more Under Armour apparel, like a warm-up jacket or warm-up pants, they can do that with this school allotment that Under Armour will provide. And then if they go beyond that, then they could purchase more Under Armour using just through this agreement, through the agreement with BSN, and they would get a 40% discount on the purchase, as well as they would get a credit of 15% for any future purchases. So it is an exclusivity agreement in this case. So that term has changed in that if the schools are making any purchases for their teams, they have to be Under Armour purchases. Before, the provision was that they could, if another company wanted to provide something, then Under Armour would get a chance to match it. Now it is that they have to buy with Under Armour, but again, based on this long-standing partnership that has really grown over time, and all the advantages that come with it, is the reason why we're recommending that you approve it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can move forward.
All right. The next item is 13.01. The Chief Financial Officer requests the board's approval of a contract with Marco Technologies to provide digital network copiers and to support Baltimore City Schools. The contract term is September 1st, 2023 through August 31st, 2025. The estimated total contract amount is $2,345,859.12. And City Schools currently leases approximately 688 copiers. And this contract is a piggyback of Pennsylvania Education Purchasing Program from Microcomputers.
Any questions from the committee? Questions, we can move forward.
Item 13.02. The Chief Financial Officer requests the board's approval to contract with Coastal Sunbelt Produce to provide fresh fruits and vegetables to city schools. The contract term is October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2026. And this award includes 2 one-year renewal options. And the estimated annual contract amount is $6.5 million.
Any questions from the committee? No questions, we can move forward.
Okay. Section 13.03, the Chief Financial Officer requests the board's approval of a contract with 3 catering vendors, Pastores of Rosedale, Royal Excellence Catering, and Jupiter Holdings. And this is to provide supplemental catering services to city schools, locations, and offices. The estimated annual amount is $500,000, and the contract term is September 27th, 2023 through May 14th of 2025.
Any questions? Okay, we can move forward.
Section 14. 01, the Chief Information Technology Officer requests the board's approval to extend the contract term and to increase the estimated contract amount for Plant Moran. This is to continue to provide ERP project management consultant services. This extension would go through February 11th, 2026. And the increase to the total contract amount is $1,149,000 and $1,149,060.
Any questions from the committee? Can move forward.
Apologies. Okay. Chief Operating Officer 1501. The COO requests the board's approval of a competitively bid solicited contract to Bronner Builders, and this is for restroom upgrades at School 58. And this is in the amount of $1,425,492.
Any questions from the committee? Can move forward.
The next one is another award to Bronner Builders. This is section 1502. And this is for restroom upgrades at Harlem Park, School 35. And this is in the amount of $1,154,412. And this was competitively bid.
Any questions from the committee? We can move forward.
Section 15.03. This is an award to Bronner Builders for restroom upgrades to School 400A. And this is a competitively bidded solicitation in the amount of $2,310,119.
Any questions? We can move forward.
Okay. 1504. This is a competitively bid award to Bronner Builders for restroom upgrades at Northern Building 402. And this is in the amount of $3,680,090.
Any questions from the committee? We can move forward.
This is item 1505. This is a restroom upgrade at Beachfield Pre-K to 8 school, School 246 to Bronner Builders, Inc. And this is in the amount of $1,992,794 for a competitively solicited contract.
Any questions from the committee? Can move forward.
Okay. Item 1506, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively bid solicited contract to Janus Contractors. And this is for restroom upgrades at James McHenry, School 10. And the amount is $1,424,166.
Any questions from the committee? No, we can move forward.
Okay. Item 1507, the Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a competitively bid solicitation to Denver Ellick in the amount of $1,217,700. And this is for restroom upgrades at Thomas Jefferson School number 232.
Seeing no hands, I do not believe there's any questions on this item either. We can move forward.
All right. Finally, section 1508. Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a contract with ODP Business Solutions, formerly Office Depot, to provide office supplies to city schools. The estimated annual contract amount is $10 million. The contract term is for October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2026. And this includes 2 one-year renewal options. And this is the piggyback of a competitively bid solicitation with Oakland County.
Commissioner Coy.
Yes, as I recall, last year there was I don't remember if it was a gift card that was given to teachers or just the ability to spend a certain amount of, I think, $200 for classroom supplies. Is this similar to that, or is this managed purely at the school level, and this is a ability to procure, but the school's business manager or principal will be making decisions about items being procured?
Yes, this contract.
Oh, I think you went on mute.
You muted, Catherine.
Apologies. Yeah, this is just a contract for the schools and offices to use our requisitioning system to purchase, all of the items in the catalog.
Separately from this, then, is there a plan to repeat what was done previously around, and not that you would know, I guess maybe that's a broader question I'll send in. But was that program last year sort of effective, and is it being repeated? But I can send that question to the board office.
Yes, that should be for the board letter author. Seeing no additional questions, I want to encourage my committee members, understanding the very full agenda we had today. I want to encourage my committee members, if there are additional questions, comments, remarks that you have on any of the presentations or procurement items for today, to circle back with the board office to close the loop on any of those outstanding thoughts. I also want to encourage the members of the public to attend our next committee meeting on October 17th. That will take place virtually at 10:30 a.m. And that is end of call for today. Thank you all for attending today's Operations Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.